I recently picked up a Samsung Z Fold 7 and I have it here, but to be honest, it's quite a boring video. There's lots of videos on this already, so go check those out. Instead, we're going to go back in time and we're going to take a look at this thing, the HTC Dream or T-Mobile G1, the first commercially available Android phone. So yes, this is where it all started. This is where Android was born, at least publicly. There were certainly lots of prototypes before this, and there's quite famously a very BlackBerry-looking prototype. I'll put an image on the screen. And then suddenly the iPhone was released, and Google had to make a very prompt kind of U-turn almost, and realized that touchscreens were going to be very important. And this is what they came up with, partnering with HTC. In some areas, it's just called the T-Mobile G1 because it was on T-Mobile. And in other areas, it was the HTC Dream. So, like I say, this is the very first Android phone that was kind of actually available. This wasn't my first Android phone. My first Android phone was the HTC Magic, which is kind of the second version. It's kind of the next version that HTC did. And we will definitely look at this another day. But today I wanted to take a look at this because I never owned one of these when it was new. And I definitely always kind of wanted one. And finally, I was able to get my hands on one at a reasonable price because these things are getting quite expensive now. And yeah, I thought we would take a quick look at it today and reminisce about a simpler time in Android. Because the early days of Android history is actually really fascinating. And I definitely recommend this book called Androids by Chet Hayes. If you are interested in the actual building of the Android operating system, this is a very, very good book. Not sponsored, but really, really like it. So go check that out. But Android came from a very interesting world where actually originally the operating system was being designed for cameras, for digital cameras. The very first people behind it realized that, the digital camera operating systems really sucked and they wanted to do something better. But coincidentally, at the same time, Google was looking for an operating system for their upcoming smartphones, and they found the Android project and kind of had a to and fro, and what we know as Android today was born. But again, definitely go check that book out if you want more of that history. That we're not going to go into much more than that now. Just suffice to say, Android originally was for digital cameras, then it was for a BlackBerry style device, and we finally ended up with this. All right, let's get this opened up and let's check it out. There's just one thing in here that I did want to point out because I found this very interesting. This is kind of the early timeline of Android from the actual founding all the way back in 2003, all the way through to when it was acquired by Google, when the iPhone was released, and finally when the G1 came out, which is what we're looking at today. Again, go check this book out. But here we go. Here's the box that the original G1 came in. And it really was a very different phone compared to the earlier prototypes, what the public SDK had as an emulator. They very quickly made a change once the iPhone was released. Anyway, we've got some interesting stats around here, and it is branded as with Google. In fact, actually, it doesn't say anywhere on the front here Android, because obviously when this came out, Android was not a known thing. It didn't exist. So the Google name, that was the brand behind it, really. It unlocks the mobile power of the internet with very fast and convenient internet browsing, one-touch access to Google search, a large touchscreen, that's debatable by today's standards, and a full keypad. And of course, a vast choice of useful applications and exciting games. I always feel like this might have been a stab at iOS, because I don't remember if when this released, iOS had been updated to have the App Store yet. I know when the iPhone first came out, it did not have the App Store. But anyway, around the back, we have some more stats, and this is where we do find that we have the Android operating system, and we also have the Android logo. All sorts of useful information, mainly software-based. There are some details in terms of hardware. We have a 3.2-inch screen, which is, very small. Internal 192 megabytes of RAM, 256 megabytes of flash memory, which kind of really highlights how small this thing was. But it did have up to an 8 gig SD card slot as well. It does have a camera on the rear, no selfie camera, and a few other bits and pieces like the music player and YouTube application. So yeah, kind of interesting. Other than that, that is basically the brand. There's a few more details around this side as well. And yeah, let's get it out. So I actually really liked this box. I was pleasantly surprised. I never saw the packaging of this until I picked this up, but I was kind of pleasantly surprised. It's all cardboard. It flips up with a magnet and lifts up like this and displays the phone, which I think is just very, very nice packaging. You get a G1 branded screen cloth, which is kind of nice. Also kind of nice it's still here. I like that. And then the phone itself, and we have, as you can see, a black one here. They came in black and they came in white. And it isn't in the best of state. This is a really like rubberized plastic, which, as you can see, is starting to kind of wear away and definitely kind of starts to crumble a bit, especially on the back here as well. And then there's your camera. Now there is a bit of, yeah, here it is. There is a bit of glass that goes in the back there to protect the camera lens. And that was just stuck in. So that, unfortunately, the adhesive is well and truly gone on that. So I need to get that fixed at some point, but there you go, there is that as well. And then other than the phone itself, I don't think I have any other accessories in here, but you can definitely see how this would have all come together. This would have held all your accessories and bits and pieces. Don't have any of those with this, unfortunately, but that's okay. It would have just been charging cables, plug, probably some really bad headphones, and that kind of thing. Nothing really to write home about. It's the box itself that I'm kind of interested in, and the phone itself. So over to the phone itself, and yeah, straight away, that 3.2-inch screen definitely feels small. Here is my Fold 7, and that kind of maybe puts it into perspective there, just how small that is. So let's get this thing turned on the front here. And I'm doing that now because it's going to take a little while to boot. These things are incredibly slow, and we may need to get it charged up. Let's get some power on this. I'll be back in a second. All right, I found a power cable that'll fit, and it's a good time to actually talk about the fact that this is actually a proprietary cable by HTC. It was used on a lot of their original HTC phones. So yeah, it kind of looks like mini USB, but it's not. And it needs its own plug, which is very, very annoying. But this, again, was a time when phones did that. Everything was proprietary. The iPhone had a proprietary connector. Other phone brands, they all had their own phone connectors. We were kind of 1 or 2 generations away from a USB standard being the standard for things that aren't the iPhone. Obviously, it took them a lot longer to catch up. But anyway, let's now get this thing turned on now that we are getting some power in there. And check it out. Okay, so I left it for a little while and it still wouldn't turn on, and I've just taken the battery out, and I'm not sure if you can see that, but there is some serious bulging going on in the middle of that battery there. Yeah, it's happening there as well. So it's suffice to say that I need to dispose of this battery very quickly and very safely, because yeah, that is definitely bulging, and not good, not good. Do not leave batteries in old tech. Take them out, please, because this can happen, and then yeah, things can go bad very, very quickly. So I'm going to go get rid of this, and then we're going to try it just plugged in instead, because I think that's going to just be a safer way to get this thing to turn on. And a quick look online says that actually you cannot power this on just plugged in. So that's really annoying. This has literally happened in the last like 3 weeks since I got this, because I got it and I turned it on and I tested it and it was working perfectly fine. So that's a little bit annoying. We're going to nonetheless have a look around this phone. And because I have it here, we're also going to have a look at this and look at the earlier versions of Android anyway. So this is becoming a little bit of a look at 2 phones. And that's okay, because I don't want to burn my house down. So let's just not worry about this battery. Hey, let's have a look at this anyway, and maybe I'll see if I can get a aftermarket battery at some point for this. It's safe to say that obviously as a phone, as a device, as at anything really, it's not very useful anymore. It obviously doesn't have support for things like 4G. I don't think it'll actually connect to a network here in the UK anymore. The latest versions of Android that it will install to, which I think is 1.6, is long killed off by Google. So you can't run apps on here. Generally just speaking, it is kind of more of just a relic and a nice thing to own. So maybe not having the battery is not a bad thing. Again, don't want to blow the house up. So let's have a look at the device itself. And Honestly, it was quite an interesting phone, even back then, but even now, it's still quite interesting. You have a row of physical buttons along the bottom here, a call accept, a home button, a back button, and a decline button / power button. You have a menu button in the center there, and then you have this here, which is actually a tiny little trackball, which was a way of navigating around the UI, and also it clicks in, I believe, as well. And essentially, the touchscreens of the time were not that amazing. People knew they weren't amazing, so having another way of like moving or like scrolling through text and that sort of thing is still very useful. There is also a notification LED in the top here. That is still one of the features I absolutely miss. I wish we still had notification LEDs. It was so nice being able to have a little LED that just tells you if you have a notification when your screen's off. I know with OLED screens you can have them on and not use much power, but just a little LED blinking, which you could change color based on the notifications and all that sort of stuff, so much better, so much more power efficient. Really annoyed that that got kind of removed from devices. But anyway, rants aside, moving around the device, you've got a volume rocker there, you've got your proprietary charge port at the bottom, you've got a camera button around here, and you've got that teeny tiny little camera there as well. And then, of course, the kind of party trick, if you like, of this phone is that the screen slides up to reveal a QWERTY keyboard. And honestly, in all seriousness, the keyboard was not that bad. The phone is very rigid, it feels good in the hand, and actually the typing experience is not bad, which is a good thing because when this launched, there was no virtual keyboard. That's right, you could not enter text when it was like this. If you wanted to enter text in anything, you had to use the physical keyboard, which meant holding it like this. It definitely tells the tale of the fact that they rushed to change the design. They did not have a virtual keyboard ready. I believe it was either 1.1 or 1.5 that they introduced the virtual keyboard. So it did come along. But yeah, they were very much expecting you to use a physical keyboard to interact with this because they were going for that BlackBerry market until Apple came on the scene. So nonetheless, very, very interesting. And yeah, it's a pleasant thing to hold. It's small, it's easy to hold in the hand. The keys have a bit of a click to them. I'm not sure you can hear that, but they do. And just even now, the hinge works quite well. It's a little stiff, but it works. It's a simple mechanism. It's spring-loaded, and it just works. So yeah, other than the fact that the battery tried to kill me, very, very pleasantly surprised with this device. So yeah, this is the HTC Dream or the T-Mobile G1 and the first device that ran Android. But obviously we want to look at an older version of Android, and I do have here my HTC Magic, and I believe in some areas it was actually called the T-Mobile G2 as well. So let's take a look at this and have a little look at Android. So here we go, booted up into Android, and I am keeping this charging because I think the battery in this is not going to kill me, but I think it's not holding much of a charge either. And what we have here, I always thought felt like a much more polished product. It's a nicer, much smaller casing. You've got rid of the physical keyboard because there's actually a virtual keyboard at the point that this comes out. You've still got the same amount of buttons, just in a nicer layout. You still have that trackball as well. Volume rocker, still has that proprietary cable and your camera around the back. And it just feels like a more concise device. And honestly, it's actually pretty responsive. It's pretty nice even now. Again, can you do anything with it? Well, no, not in 2025. This is kind of well and truly dead, but we can definitely have a poke about. And I think this particular one is running 2.2 Android. So this is not the version of Android that came with this. This came with 1.6, if I remember rightly, maybe 1.5, but I definitely had 1.6 on it. And overall, this is a much more polished phone, if you ask me. Android is a little bit laggy on here, and I think part of that is that 2.2 was really too much for this device to handle, and I have distinct memories of like rolling back to 1.6 because it was a better experience in terms of usability and lag. But yeah, I mean, it's functional still, so that's kind of cool. But like, you see how long that took to load that, and like it's a bit laggy even in the viewfinder. Obviously, your video quality is terrible, and there isn't an SD card insert, so you can't do anything anyway. And again, can't actually connect to anything because this is so old that Google have abandoned it. You can't really go online because SSL certs are really out of date and you won't let you connect to any secure websites. And just generally, not a lot you can do other than admire the fact that it's a thing that existed and realistically is so much better for the hand. Just look at that. Look at the difference there between these two devices. It's kind of insane. There you have it, the T-Mobile G1 or HTC Dream. What a device. This particular one trying to kill me, but nonetheless, really, really cool. And I'm glad to have one in my collection now. And I hope that kind of gave you a little bit of nostalgia or just a bit of fun looking at something that old. I'd love to hear about your stories of your first smartphones, your first experiences, particularly with Android. It's always a great topic, people coming in at different times. And yeah, a little bit of a shame about that battery. But again, make sure to securely, safely dispose of old batteries, especially those kinds of batteries from old smartphones. They are so prone to bulging and then exploding that it's really not worth keeping them in a device if you're not going to use the device. But thank you very much for watching. Like I say, bit of a different video. I hope you enjoyed it. I just wanted to show what I'd managed to find really on eBay. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you again for another video very, very soon. Bye for now.